I have good news and bad news for you. The bad news is you're going to get compared to Stone Angel. The good news is I don't think you come off badly at all getting compared to that book. In that it's an old lady looking back at her life.
Yeah, and they're very, I mean, and these women are so different. I mean, I waited until, because at some point I was talking about this book to someone and they said, oh, it's like Stone Angel. And I thought, oh, God, yeah, I guess it is. I should, then I thought, well, I won't look at Stone Angel until I get to a certain point with this so that I won't, either so that I won't be influenced by it, but also so I won't be
intimidated by it?
Well, not so much intimidated as thinking, oh, I can't write that because she's already written that part, you know. But it's, the journeys are really different, and
well, she's a nicer person. Hagar was a very difficult woman. Was it Hagar or
Hagar? Yeah, Hagar Shipley. Yeah.
But this is a very, what's he say? A very ordinary woman.
Completely. I mean, because Hagar Shipley isn't an ordinary person.
No.
I mean, and that's the power of that book is how cranky she is. I mean, she's really. I mean, who'd want to be Hagar's son? I mean, that's no picnic. But that was the wonderful thing about that book. You know, and in this, and it's not like this is Susan Ann is sort of nice as pie either. I mean, she has her own, you know, she's far from a perfect parent, and
but she's not curmudgeonly, and she doesn't have a mean streak in her, and she doesn't have an edge to her.
No, I mean, her problems are really ordinary problems. I think, like for example, when she's sort of yearning to be reunited with her husband, and she starts thinking about how important that is and how much she loved him. And then she goes off on a tangent about, but what if she's reunited with him and it's one of those bad times, like when they didn't get along, or when she was so fed up with him, and when they weren't speaking, or, I mean, those things that sort of happen in every relationship. She's, I didn't want her to, I mean, she's not nicey nice, and even she doesn't look back on her marriage as being perfect. I mean, there were so many problems, and she has the same problems, I think, that we all do. Her life is sort of a really worthwhile struggle.
There's sort of alternating sort of chapter format. You could go from the present day where she's on 9/11, she's in the hospital and dying,
yeah,
and then to this alternate landscape, I think is the right word for it.
Yeah. I spent time at my mother's deathbed. My mother died in Sudbury in a sort of a marvelous hospital there where she had fabulous care, but I was at her bedside there. I also spent time at the bedside of my friend Danny, who had AIDS, who died in Toronto, and I was sort of deathbed, sort of really where the thing started. And in all those situations, the person dying would suddenly say something that I think I have no idea where they're coming from, in the sense of they're talking about something, I don't know if it's in the present day, or if it's yesterday, or if it's, you know, in the case of my mother, 60 years ago. And my mother at times also confused people with people who were long dead. So the book sort of is also an answer to the question, where does the mind go when the body starts to shut down? So that the landscape that she goes through is really the landscape of her past, in part, as I think, because she wants to revisit these places that were so important to her. And I mean, and one of the big things that I do have in common with this character is a kind of really, I think, profound love for the land. Like, my favorite things in writing this book were like to write the description of her walking across the Tantramar Marsh, you know, between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, because it's just, I just think it's the most phenomenal landscape. It's just so extraordinary. Or walking through the Wentworth Valley, or her past is just tied up in that geography. But what she hadn't counted on, and what sort of begins to happen as she journeys, is how she does also move through time in a way that's not logical, in a kind of sense of reality, but was
It has that dream logic.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, well, that's it. It's a dream.
I was teary at the end, but I was happy. I felt satisfied.
Well, I mean, there used to be this whole notion, like long before the 20th century, of the idea of the good death, you know? And I think the good death is not a bad concept. And especially
on a day, 9/11, where there were so many bad deaths.
Exactly. And you know, she at some point she says, you know, she's not young. It's not tragic. I mean, you know, the death of an 85-year-old woman isn't you know, a tragic thing. I mean, she's kind of ready to go. Her body is kind of given up on her. So there it is. I mean, I think we just have such. Our culture is so obsessed with, you know, being 20 and wanting to look 20 until we're dead, and it's idiotic. I think there's something about understanding and accepting the fact that if we're lucky, we will get old and then we will die, hopefully, you know, in a bed surrounded by our family. I mean, that seems to be, I think, something worth aiming for. That doesn't sound too great. Not yearning for or longing for, but it's a good thing.
The book is Ragged Islands. I've been speaking with the author Dawn Hannah, and Ragged Islands, published by Knopf Canada.